Hi, welcome to the quiz. You can answer along on quizalto.com, all for free. The exact URL of this quiz will be in the notes down below. Let's get started, good luck. In which type of scenarios are AWS local zones particularly useful? Applications requiring low latency access to AWS services. Applications with high computational requirements. Applications with strict regulatory requirements. Applications with global user bases. AWS local zones are particularly useful for applications requiring low latency access to AWS services, such as real-time gaming and multimedia content delivery. What is the primary purpose of AWS regions and availability zones? Enhanced security. Cost reduction. Increased availability and fault tolerance. Improved performance. The description states that AWS regions and availability zones offer increased availability and fault tolerance. What is the primary benefit of using AWS local zones? Reduced latency. Enhanced security. Increased redundancy. Lower cost. The primary benefit of using AWS local zones is reduced latency, as they bring AWS services closer to end users in specific geographic locations. What is the term for a fully isolated section of the AWS cloud where you can launch AWS resources in a virtual network? Amazon EC2. Amazon RDS. Amazon Virtual Private Cloud. Amazon S3. Amazon Virtual Private Cloud is a fully isolated section of the AWS cloud where you can launch AWS resources in a virtual network that you define. How many data centers can an AWS availability zone comprise? One or more. Exactly one. Exactly two. None. Availability zone can consist of one or more data centers. What ensures the highly available infrastructure in AWS? Availability zones. Data centers. Instances. Regions. AWS availability zones offer highly available infrastructure. What is the primary benefit of using AWS wavelength zones for mobile applications? Lower cost. Increased redundancy. Enhanced security. Reduced latency. The primary benefit of using AWS wavelength zones for mobile applications is reduced latency, as they bring AWS services closer to mobile users, improving application responsiveness. What is a characteristic of each AWS availability zone's infrastructure? Independent power, networking, and connectivity. Shared resources. Limited redundancy. Centralized control. Each availability zone is independent in terms of power, networking, and connectivity. What is the term for a point of presence location where AWS CloudFront caches copies of your content for faster delivery to users? Region. Data center. Availability zone. Edge location. An edge location is a point of presence location where AWS CloudFront caches copies of your content for faster delivery to users, reducing latency and improving user experience. Which component of AWS infrastructure provides redundant power, networking, and connectivity? Regions. Data centers. Instances. Availability zones. Availability zones provide redundant power, networking, and connectivity. What is the smallest geographical area in AWS infrastructure? Edge location. Data center. Availability zone. Region. An availability zone is the smallest geographical area in AWS infrastructure, designed to be isolated from failures in other availability zones. What is the term for the point of presence locations where AWS CloudFront caches copies of your content for faster delivery to users? Data centers. Edge locations. Regions. Availability zones. Edge locations are point-of-presence locations where AWS CloudFront caches copies of your content for faster delivery to users at low latencies. Which AWS service is closely associated with AWS Edge locations for content delivery? Amazon CloudFront. Amazon S3. Amazon EC2. Amazon RDS. Amazon CloudFront is closely associated with AWS Edge locations for content delivery, as it uses edge locations to cache and distribute content to end users with low latency and high transfer speeds. What is the primary benefit of using AWS Edge locations for content delivery? Increased redundancy. Enhanced security. Reduced latency. Lower cost. The primary benefit of using AWS Edge locations for content delivery is reduced latency, as it brings content closer to end users, improving response times and user experience. Which term refers to a distinct location within an AWS region that is engineered to be isolated from failures in other availability zones? Edge location. Region. Availability zone. Data center. An availability zone is a physically separate data center within an AWS region, designed to be isolated from failures in other availability zones to provide high availability and fault tolerance. What is the term for the AWS service that provides a content delivery network service to distribute content to end users with low latency? Amazon S3. Amazon CloudFront. Amazon Route 53. Amazon EC2. Amazon CloudFront is the AWS service that provides a content delivery network service to distribute content to end users with low latency, leveraging edge locations for faster delivery. How does AWS describe the infrastructure in its availability zones? Highly available and fault-tolerant. Limited and unstable. Basic and unreliable. Variable and unpredictable. Availability zones offer highly available and fault-tolerant infrastructure. Which technology is closely associated with AWS wavelength zones? 3G, LTE, 4G, 5G. AWS wavelength zones are closely associated with 5G technology, leveraging the high-speed, low-latency capabilities of 5G networks to deliver AWS services closer to end users. What is the typical size of an AWS wavelength zone in terms of geographical coverage? Global coverage. Within a city. Across multiple countries. Within a country. An AWS wavelength zone typically covers a specific city or metropolitan area, providing ultra-low latency access to AWS services for mobile and edge applications. What is the primary purpose of AWS edge locations? To store backups of data in different regions. To cache content and improve the performance of AWS services for end users. To enhance security features of AWS services. To provide isolated testing environments for AWS services. AWS edge locations primarily serve to cache content and improve the performance of AWS services for end users by reducing latency and improving response times. How does AWS infrastructure ensure fault tolerance for databases? Automated backups. Operating in multiple availability zones. Using redundant storage. Utilizing powerful instances. Operating databases in multiple availability zones ensures fault tolerance. What ensures the scalability of operating production applications in multiple availability zones? Geographic dispersion. Fault tolerance. Resource pooling. Redundancy. The description implies that operating production applications in multiple availability zones ensures scalability. How many AWS regions are there globally? 10 plus. 50 plus. 25 plus. 33. As of 2022, AWS has 33 regions globally, providing customers with a wide range of options for deploying applications and services. What is the purpose of AWS local zones? To provide isolated network environments for testing. To extend AWS infrastructure to geographic locations closer to end users. To create redundant copies of data in different regions. To enhance security features of AWS services. AWS local zones extend AWS infrastructure to geographic locations closer to end users, enabling low-latency access to AWS services. What ensures the fault tolerance of databases in AWS? Regular backups. Using redundant instances. Increased storage capacity. Operating in multiple availability zones. Operating databases in multiple availability zones ensures fault tolerance. And that's a wrap. Thanks to everyone who participated. Remember, you can answer along on quizalto.com, where you can keep track of your progress and find much more quizzes. We hope you had a fun and challenging time. Until next time. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up. Subscribe to the channel for more. Hit the bell icon to be notified as soon as we upload. Please leave a comment if you have any thoughts or suggestions, and, if you think this video is worth sharing with someone who could benefit from it, please forward a link to them. See you next time. Thanks for watching.